I started by suggesting marriage counseling, thinking that maybe we just needed help communicating. She agreed, though not enthusiastically, and we went to a therapist I found online. During those sessions, it became painfully clear that our problems ran far deeper than I had imagined. When the therapist asked her what she valued most about our marriage, her answer stunned me. She said, stability. Not love, not companionship, not the bond we shared, just stability. She admitted that she appreciated how I provided for her and allowed her to live comfortably, but when the therapist asked about her emotional connection to me, she shrugged. It was as if my role in her life had been reduced to that of a financial safety net. The sessions didn't last long. After 3 visits, she declared counseling a waste of time and refused to go back. I, on the other hand, continued attending sessions alone, desperate to figure out where things had gone wrong and what I could do to fix them. One day, during one of those solo sessions, my therapist asked me a simple question that changed everything. "What are you holding on to?" I didn't have an answer. I sat there stunned as the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I was holding on to a fantasy of what my marriage used to be, or rather, what I had always wanted it to be. I was clinging to the hope that if I just tried hard enough, I could rekindle something that had probably never truly existed in the first place. From that moment on, I started paying more attention to the cracks in our relationship. I noticed how dismissive she was of me in front of her friends, how she barely acknowledged me when I came home from work, and how she never made any effort to include me in her life. It wasn't just neglect, it was indifference. One evening, I came home earlier than expected. Her car wasn't in the driveway, but I heard voices coming from the back patio. As I walked around the side of the house, I saw her sitting with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing, leaning in close, and sharing a bottle of wine. My heart sank. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I watched from the shadows, my mind racing. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe he was just a friend. But deep down, I knew better. When she came inside, I calmly asked her who the man was. Her response was nonchalant. "Oh, just a friend from the gym." She acted like it was no big deal, but the way she avoided eye contact told me everything I needed to know. That night, I slept in the spare room, not because of my snoring, but because I couldn't bear to be near her. The next day, I decided to take a deeper look into her life. I hated the idea of snooping, but I needed the truth. Her phone was always glued to her side, so I checked our shared computer instead. What I found shattered any lingering hope I had for our marriage. There were dozens of messages between her and the man from the patio. Flirty, intimate, and explicit. They had been seeing each other for months. She had shared details about our marriage with him, how she felt trapped, how I was boring, and how she wished she had never gotten married in the first place. I confronted her that evening. At first, she denied everything. But when I showed her the messages, her tone shifted. Instead of apologizing, she became defensive. "What do you expect?" she snapped. "You've been so distant since the accident. I need more than you can give me." That was the moment I realized it was over. No amount of therapy or effort on my part could fix what she had broken. She didn't love me, she didn't respect me, and she certainly didn't value our marriage. The next morning, I packed a bag and left. I didn't say much, just that I needed space. I stayed with a friend while I sorted out the logistics of filing for divorce. She didn't fight me on it. In fact, she seemed relieved. It hurt more than I can put into words. The divorce process was painful, but straightforward. Because we didn't have children and our finances were largely separate, it was finalized within a few months. I left her the house and most of our belongings. I didn't want any reminders of the life we had built, or rather, the life I had built while she enjoyed the benefits. In the years since, I've focused on rebuilding myself. Therapy has been a constant, helping me untangle the emotional scars of my marriage. I've also reconnected with old hobbies and made new friends who genuinely care about me. For the first time in years, I feel free. Looking back, I don't regret the marriage. It taught me valuable lessons about self-worth, boundaries, and the importance of mutual respect in a relationship. But more importantly, it taught me that sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. To anyone reading this who feels stuck in a one-sided relationship, know that you deserve better. You deserve a partner who sees you, values you, and fights for you as much as you fight for them. Don't settle for less. I did for far too long, and it nearly broke me. But here I am still standing, still learning, and finally at peace. I made an effort to reconnect with her. I suggested date nights, planned trips, and came up with activities we could enjoy together. Hiking, cooking classes, even just quiet evenings watching movies. But every time I reached out, she brushed off my attempts. "I'm too tired," she'd say, or "maybe next weekend." Each rejection chipped away at my hope. I even tried talking to her about how I felt. I told her I missed her, that I wanted to feel like a team again. But she had a way of shutting down those conversations, turning them against me. "You're overthinking," she'd say. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." It left me questioning myself, wondering if I really was the problem. Then came my 30th birthday. I came home from work that day with cautious optimism. Maybe she'd planned a surprise dinner or a quiet celebration, just the two of us. But when I opened the door, the house was silent, empty. No balloons, no decorations, not even a note. I checked my phone, hoping for a text or a voicemail, but there was nothing. Swallowing my disappointment, I walked into the kitchen and saw a sticky note on the counter. It read, "Went out with friends. Don't wait up." That was it. No happy birthday, no acknowledgement of the day at all. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the note, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. It wasn't just the lack of effort, it was the complete disregard for my feelings. I realized then that I was holding on to a relationship that no longer existed, and perhaps never truly had. Over the next few days, I began to withdraw emotionally. I stopped trying to plan outings or initiate conversations. I started focusing on myself, going to the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and spending time on hobbies I had neglected. The more I pulled away, the clearer it became that she didn't care. She didn't ask where I was going or why I seemed distant. It was as if my absence made no difference to her. One night, I came home late after meeting a friend for dinner. The house was dark, and her car was in the driveway. As I walked inside, I noticed a strange feeling of calm. I no longer felt the need to tiptoe around her emotions or seek her approval. I realized that I had been living in a one-sided marriage for far too long, and it was time to let go completely. The next morning, I told her I wanted a divorce. Her reaction was muted, almost indifferent. "If that's what you want," she said, as if she had been expecting it. There were no tears, no arguments, no attempts to salvage what was left of our relationship. In that moment, I felt a sense of liberation. I had finally taken control of my own happiness. The months that followed were challenging, but they also brought a newfound sense of clarity. I moved into a small apartment and began rebuilding my life from the ground up. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and family, and I threw myself into therapy and self-improvement. Slowly but surely, I rediscovered who I was outside of the marriage. Now, years later, I can look back on that time with gratitude for the lessons it taught me. I learned the importance of self-respect, the value of genuine connections, and the strength it takes to walk away from something that's no longer serving you. To anyone reading this who feels stuck in a similar situation, know that it's never too late to choose yourself. You deserve love, respect, and happiness, and sometimes the only way to find it is to let go of what's holding you back. I checked my phone, hoping for a message or a sign, anything to break the suffocating silence. Instead, I stumbled upon a photo she had posted on social media, a luxurious spa day with her friends. The caption read, "Self-care day with my girls, much needed." The image hit me like a punch to the gut. She looked radiant, carefree, and happy, nothing like the woman I saw at home, who barely acknowledged my presence anymore. That night, I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, eating lukewarm takeout while a movie played in the background. The room felt cold despite the summer warmth. I wasn't paying attention to the screen, and my mind was elsewhere, consumed by the painful realization that this was my life now. Lonely dinners, unreciprocated efforts, an unspoken chasm between us that had only grown with time. I glanced at the slice of cake I had picked up earlier, a small indulgence I thought might cheer me up. It sat untouched on the coffee table, mocking me with its sweetness. Once, I would have shared it with her, laughed over something trivial, and felt a sense of connection. Now, it was just me. I stared at it, and a painful clarity settled over me. I couldn't do this anymore. This wasn't a marriage. It was a performance, a one-sided effort to keep something alive that had been dead for years. I wanted out. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. Sitting in his office, I laid everything bare. I told him about the growing distance between us, the countless nights spent alone, and how I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. His calm, professional demeanor put me at ease as he walked me through the steps of drafting divorce papers. For the first time in years, I felt like I was taking control. It wasn't easy. A part of me still mourned what we had once been, but another part, larger and louder, felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Over the following weeks, I began preparing to leave. It wasn't an impulsive decision. I had spent months trying to reconnect, to spark some life back into our relationship, but she had been too absorbed in her world of friends, social media, and distractions. I realized there was nothing left to salvage. Slowly, methodically, I started putting my plan into motion. I stopped engaging with her unless absolutely necessary. Our conversations became brief, almost robotic. In the evenings, while she was out with her friends or scrolling endlessly on her phone, I started selling my belongings. These weren't just random items. They were pieces of our life together. The dining set we had picked out as newlyweds. The guitar I had played for her on lazy Sunday afternoons. Each sale was bittersweet, like shedding a layer of the past. But I knew it was necessary. I bought a new car and rented a garage space a few blocks away. I packed in secret, moving my essentials bit by bit: clothes, important documents, and a few keepsakes that truly mattered. Every item I packed felt like a small step toward freedom. She didn't notice. She didn't ask where I was going or what I was doing. Her indifference only confirmed that I was making the right choice. 2 months after my birthday, The last time she had even acknowledged me, the day finally came. She left for another lunch with her friends, and I seized the moment. With everything packed into my car, I placed the divorce papers on the desk in the spare room, alongside a handwritten letter. In it, I explained my decision not out of anger, but with quiet resignation. I thanked her for the memories, even if they felt distant now, and wished her well. As I closed the front door behind me, I didn't feel regret. I felt free. It was a strange sensation, bittersweet, yes, but liberating. I drove for hours, unsure of where I was headed, but certain I was moving towards something better. Days turned into weeks. It took her 10 days to notice I was gone. 10 days. Her first message was brief and curt. "Is this some kind of joke?" I didn't respond immediately. The texts kept coming, shifting from confused to furious to desperate. By the third day, she was begging me to come back. "I don't know what I did wrong," she wrote, and for a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. Then came the message that stopped me cold. "I'm sorry. I promise I'll cut him off." I hadn't even suspected an affair. That night, I called her. She answered on the first ring, her voice sharp and demanding. "What the hell is going on? Why did you leave?" Her anger was palpable, but I stayed silent and hung up. A minute later, I called again. This time, she picked up, shouting even louder. Once more, I hung up. The third time I called, she finally fell silent, letting me speak. I laid everything bare. I told her how I had felt like a ghost in our marriage, unseen, unheard, and unloved. I recounted my attempts to reconnect, the growing frustration, and the eventual decision to leave. For a month before I left, I said, "I was selling my things, and you didn't even notice. It took you 10 days to realize I was gone." Her silence was deafening. Then I addressed her admission about the affair. "Thank you for confirming what I hadn't suspected," I said calmly. Her breath hitched. She tried to explain, stumbling over her words, but I cut her off. "When you asked me to come back," I continued, "I need to know why. What's in it for me? What's going to change?" She couldn't answer. After a long pause, I ended the call with finality. "My lawyer will be in touch," I said before blocking her number. The next day, I bought a new phone with a new number and left my old one behind at a motel. I didn't want any lingering ties to my past. 2 weeks later, my lawyer informed me that the divorce papers had been signed. Just like that, it was over. I kept my promise. I transferred ownership of the house and car to her and set up monthly payments to our shared account for a year. After that, she would be on her own. I wanted a clean break, free of resentment, free of unfinished business. The past 5 years have been transformative. I transitioned to remote work, which allowed me to travel across the country. I visited national parks, small towns, and bustling cities, places I had always wanted to see, but couldn't because she wasn't interested. I rediscovered passions I had forgotten, like photography and hiking. Each adventure felt like a step toward reclaiming the person I had lost during our marriage. I began documenting my journey on social media, sharing photos and updates. To my surprise, my following grew steadily, bringing a sense of community I hadn't realized I needed. About a year after I left, I noticed a familiar name among my followers: my ex-wife. Out of curiosity, I glanced at her profile. She had moved on quickly, dating someone new just months after our divorce. But the relationship didn't last. Her posts became sporadic after that, and I stopped checking. As for me, I've embraced my freedom. I've had casual relationships, each one teaching me something about myself and what I want or don't want in a partner. For now, I'm not looking for anything serious. I'm content with the person I'm becoming. Recently, I decided to return to my hometown for a reunion. It's a temporary stop a month or two before I head to Canada for the next leg of my journey. I don't plan to seek out my ex-wife, but if our paths cross, I'll face it with the same calm clarity that guided me away from her. Leaving my wife was the hardest and most liberating decision I've ever made. For years, I felt trapped in a life where I was unseen and unvalued. It took her 10 days to notice I was gone, confirming what I had long feared. Our marriage had been dead for a long time. Now, I'm living a life of freedom, exploring the world, and putting myself first. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in years, I'm excited to find out. This journey has taught me that sometimes the most courageous act of love is letting go of the past, of the pain, and of the person who couldn't see your worth.